Hi, my name's Steve O'Malley, and I'd like to welcome you to a lead-in session to the Gender Justice and Disaster virtual conference, hosted by the GAD pod and the associated partners of the pod, which will run throughout the course of May. I'd like to start this evening with an acknowledgement of country, given the subject matter of the conversation this evening. I think it's even more salient and important that we do so, and we do so as a matter of course throughout all of the conference presentations and proceedings. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we work and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, to any Aboriginal people joining today. And I think given the subject matter of today's chat, there will be some Aboriginal people joining today. So hello and welcome. We understand that Aboriginal sovereignty has never been ceded, and express our hope for reconciliation, justice, and the recognition of the ongoing living culture of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. As I said before, this acknowledgement is even more salient because of the fact that I've got the honour and privilege of speaking to Victor Steffensen today. And by way of introduction, I'd like to introduce or give a little bit of background about Victor, but he is well known and people will know of his work. But for those who don't, Victor Steffensen is an Indigenous writer, filmmaker and musician, and consultant applying traditional knowledge, values and contemporary context throughout workshops and artistic projects. Proud Indigenous man. He's a descendant of the Tagalaka people through his mother's connection from the Gulf country of North Queensland. Much of Victor's work over the past 27 years has been based on the arts, reviving traditional knowledge values, particularly traditional burning, which is pretty much the subject matter of what we're going to speak to Victor about today, and what I hope Victor will enjoy to share with everyone this evening. He does this through mentoring and leadership, as well as on-ground training with Aboriginal communities and many non-Indigenous Australians. He's also the co-founder of the National Indigenous Fire Workshops, which have so far been hosted in Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. Victor is also connected with First Nations communities in California, Canada and the Sami people of Scandinavia, sharing cultural knowledge, practices relating to caring for country. I know he's totally invested in what he does, and I'm so looking forward to it because I've only ever met Victor virtually, but I've seen his work and I'm really looking forward to having a chat tonight, and I know everyone will enjoy it as well. So thank you and welcome.
The 3-year training program happening in the first pilot ones in different parts of the place. So in New South Wales is the first one, and that's got 40 trainees, believe it or not.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, 40. And 10 of those are Aboriginal staff from national parks.
I was just going to ask, yeah.
Yeah, and so National Parks has committed 10 of their staff over the next 3 years to become practitioners, and that's what's needed. The training is needed before the program start. You know, like, I mean, we've got to do the burns while we're training. We've got to get on with managing country, of course, straight away. But they need the support, and you need the training, and yeah, so it's really crucial in that way, because people will be saying they're doing cultural burns, and then they stuff up, and then all of a sudden it's stuffed up for everyone.
Yeah.
And then there's conceptions about the knowledge or about how we burn, and then it's not even the way that it would have burnt. So there's, you know, it's that we need to do this together, and we need to do this where we move together as a nation. But horses bolt in different directions.
Yeah. Look, and you know, and I know some of the advocates, your advocates, some high-profile people in the fire industry, and they're also champions for climate change awareness as well. You know, they know that the events that happen, like Black Summer, like Black Saturday, 11 years ago now, a direct result of we've gone away from talking about natural disasters now, because there's nothing natural about what's happening. COVID's not natural. It had human fingerprints all over it. Bushfire, flood, some of the catastrophic events that happen that we would traditionally call natural. It's just not. It's got power lines falling in bush, all that sort of stuff. Deliberately lit fires. There's nothing natural about it. This being, the theme of the conference being quite gendered, because we're talking about about the gendered impacts on disaster as well. And we're talking about gender justice, and we're talking about equity. And that's why we cover a whole gamut of subject titles throughout the course of the conference. And we're looking at homelessness, looking at particularly like in the discussion with you, looking at traditional burning and care for country that we should be taking a closer purview at, because you wouldn't be doing it unless you knew it was effective. And you've got, your research goes back a lot longer than some of the research that we have at our fingertips as fire services. So, and the ancillary theme to the conference is inspiring action. And I think that's where a conversation with you is really important as well, because as you just said then, and this is downplaying your role in the scheme of things, but as a trainer of trainers now, people that are going to go out there and do traditional burning, that's a huge load on your shoulders. But it must also be a relief knowing that through parks are listening to you. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, it's a slow process. I mean, there's different agencies that want to get these things going, and there's agencies that don't want to listen and they just want to do their own thing. We have a whole society that's just all mixed bag of perceptions and what they think fire management is or fire is, and there's also this other side of it, what people think they get out of putting the fires in the country. We need to really be humble about looking after our land, and we need to do it in a way that we connect with each other and we share with each other, and we aim for a goal of a baseline of knowledge that we all share and that we can all draw from. So when we look at before, like years ago, the knowledge of fire was all over the place, and still in some cases it's in that way. But we're starting to get to the point where we're bringing the knowledge together and we're bringing people to the same level of understanding, and that is really what we need to be doing, not just with fire but with many things.
So it kind of eludes me. I mean, you're covering off on so many of the things that I wanted to ask without me even asking the questions. But one thing I did want to ask from the outset was there's Indigenous, the approach that you use. It doesn't seem to be about domination. It doesn't seem to be about having total control. It seems to be, it's passive and it's mild. Even the way you speak and the way I've seen you operate, albeit on video, unfortunately, it seems passive. It seems like you're almost coming to terms with what you've got around you in less than a domineering way. Is that fair to say as well?
That's right. And I learned that from the elders, the old people. They were like, they considered rights for everybody, and they also made sure that everyone was included, and they had this old saying like, "Oh, poor fella, let him, help him out, give him a hand." But at the end of the day, people need to be inclusive because they're on this country now, and we got to be able to involve everybody. And too much in the past that we talked about the wrongs, and although our past and history of what's happened to our elders and past and people and country has been something that's been traumatic for a lot of Aboriginal people, and we can't forget that. But at the end of the day, we need to move forward in a way that is positive and that gives opportunities. And I've just learned over the years that being aggressive doesn't work. And I've learned that, you just can't do that. So you need to be softer, and we need to be inclusive, and we need to make sure that people are learning and listening, because it's not about trying to make people change it, through force or through argument. It's about exposing them to what's the reality and what is actually the truth, and that is what the country really is saying, and what that means to the people, and how that relates to the well-being of people. And it really is about breaking the mold that we've been sort of forced to believe in the sense of our society today. And really there is so much that we've been deprived from, and And that really is what we need to do for the future, for our children. And some people might not like it now, you know, in a sense of, well, what's trying to, you know, happen. Some people might get upset, but at the end of the day, it's not about them. It's about the future generations, and thinking about those generations and what they're going to think in the future. And they're going to be
absolutely.
They'll be
How do you get them in? How do you get them involved? The kids? Are you at schools? Do you do presentations for them? And it brings a smile to your face, obviously, when I say that.
Yeah. Well, the children are great, you know, and need to get involved with the children. And there's not enough youth programs happening out there, and you know, not just with the fire. I mean, with everything. And you know, like, education is the key, and we need to be teaching our children. And we're working on the education, and we've always been working on education. And even in fire country, you know, like I talk about, the very first thing we did with the old people back when I was only 18 years of age was go straight down to schoolhouse and start to teach the kids stuff, you know, take them walking in the bush and teach them how to make fire with 2 sticks, and, you know, sing songs, language songs, and all sorts of stuff. And we do that sort of stuff. And because that was the elders' highest priority, was the children. And then I think that's every elder's highest priority, is to teach the young people and make sure that they learn the language, or they learn the knowledge, and that they actually got access to the landscape is also really important, so that they can be connected to country, because that's what will heal and save us all, really, from the madness in the sense of what society can actually dish up for us, and the problems that we deal with socially, and with many communities that really are struggling, you know. So it really is a holistic thing. And as the layers come off, you know, fire's been a big thing, but what will come out of that will be more, you know, there will be more layers. And I think just within this last time of these last couple of decades of sharing knowledge on fire, and, you know, and doing workshops around the country, I think that's what people are really starting to realize, is it's not just about the fire, it's more than that. It's about well-being of the environment, well-being of our communities, and and there's so much more benefits that flow above the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, it'd be a big ask for education departments to embed your practice into schools, but and I kind of think it'd be good to actually get it away from the education, from the classroom setting, like to get them out there, actually out in nature, to see and to start communicating with country, like you said you do. It's interesting that before we started chatting, you said you were talking to bureaucrats today in council, and a few landowners as well, and that takes up a lot of your time, I'm sure, where you'd rather be out in country doing what you do best. But so essentially, you're relaying to them what you're listening and learning from the land, like from the messaging you're getting from country. Is that fair to say as well?
That's right, but I'm telling them what they need to hear.
Yeah.
And what, you know, and we never sit in the office. Like, I was talking to councils today, and they out on country, you know, and just about everyone, I get them out on country. That's the classroom, and that's where we involve the landscape and the land talk. I mean, it's not me talking out there; it's me interpreting.
Yeah.
And when I'm interpreting, and, you know, I'm basically, you know, reading the signs of the landscape, and so that people can see what the land's saying and what's happening. And when they see those indicators, and then they see the behavior of the fire, and where they see where it stops, and, you know, everything that we say the fire does, and it just, you know, you can't get any more proof than that, than the landscape itself. And when we look at all the meetings that I had with agencies, governments, councils, whatever, you know, you get nowhere when we sit in a meeting room. And, you know, over all the years, you know, growing up and seeing, and, you know, all the years of trying to get this fire through, and banging your head against the wall at meetings, and, you know, I've done all that before too, you know, and you realize that there's one vital person missing, you know, or person or being missing, and that is the country. And that being is the country. It's a living thing, and it's never heard. And people's got their own decisions and their own perceptions, but when the country steps in, then you can't argue with that. And that's why it's really crucial that I take them out on the land and interpret the land to them, and show them in their own backyard what's going on. And when they actually get that, they understand. And so when I've finished talking, they're all quiet. and you can hear their mind going, you know, and they're thinking, and what they're actually thinking about is, yeah, they're thinking about the knowledge and trying to make sense of what was just said to them. But not only that, they're actually thinking about themselves as well. They're thinking like, oh, you know, we should be doing this and we should be doing that and we should be helping these people and we should have been doing these programs a long time ago. And so that's what's going on in their heads. And within one day, the council were on board to look at ways of funding the rangers and trying to get fire practitioners in the regions, and within a couple of hours being on country, and just go home all excited. And that always happens. And you know, but the challenge is trying to keep that going, where people are so excited and they get home and then they fall over, and it's like, oh, they wake up next day and they might have forgotten about it all again.
Yeah.
Or they get to work and they go, oh, we should be doing this, doing that, and then there's someone on a higher rank that goes, oh no, we're not doing that. And then we have a paramilitary structures within all these agencies as well, and governments that they're just set up in a way that ain't gonna get any common sense through in some sense, because you got so many people in charge. And that really is probably the hardest thing to bowl over, is that paramilitary structure that sits within the agencies. Because you'll win over everyone else, but it just takes one person to say no from a higher level, and then it doesn't go ahead. And 100% of the time, the reasons have nothing to do with the landscape.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I say some of the fact that there's a former chiefs group that's talking about climate change, and one of those who I alluded to before was Greg Mullins, former commissioner from New South Wales, and Greg's a huge fan, obviously, and an advocate for awareness around climate change, but he always was. I mean, even in that rank structure organisation, he was always agitating for change. I mean, he had the IFARES program, which is a laudable, Indigenous recruit program that, had a hiccup, and he threw himself back into it as the sponsor, as a commissioner, and sorted the hiccup. So now it's operating in a really worthwhile, sustainable way. Retention's everything. If we're training people up to be firefighters in an urban context who may go out into rural areas, well, you need to be able to cater for everyone and where they want to be, rather than dictate where they go to. So, so what I was going to say is that it's quite often that when some of the people leave those positions of power, and when they leave the hierarchy and they leave that regimented, structured organisation, that they actually get a freer voice for what, and their communication frees up a lot more for when they're speaking to someone like you, because they're not hamstrung by red tape or bureaucracy or chains of command, I suppose is what you're saying. So I get a feel for what you're saying. I want to ask you a little bit about, now given that, the thing there is the fact that these organisations, response-orientated organisations like fire services, are generally dominated by men. And we have some amazing women leaders in the organisations as well. I could list the women that I've been influenced by, as well as the men I've been influenced by. But what sort of role rather do women play in the work you do, Victor? And are young girls interested in a school setting? And what sort of avenues are there for them? I know Parks have done pretty well with some of the recruitment of rangers that are women. So, and how have they done with their recruitment of Indigenous women?
Oh, it's a huge movement in terms of women's involvement. And, in an Aboriginal culture, the women always had involvement. They had women story places, and it's embedded inside the land. Actually that there is women story places where men can't go. So the land is evidence of that within those places. And it goes back to the old stories. Like my uncle would tell the story of the 7 sisters, and that story goes across many Aboriginal clan groups around Australia. It's something that feeds songlines right across the nation, from the desert to the east coast. And that story there is about the women, and about an evil old man that wanted to take these way with the women. But then that story represents where the men's world stopped, and that there was a place for women. And that was embedded within Aboriginal culture for a long time. And, things have changed, and some people are different in some places. But in the most cases, you know, what we're seeing with the fire now is the women, it's a huge rising. I mean, we just had women's workshops in the north. There's some in Tasmania coming up, but only the women are allowed to go. And that's really fantastic. And even in the landscapes too, with the ecosystems, where women had more business in terms of their sort of roles and what they did, you know, they can burn those ecosystems and it's more connected to them. And the men burn other ecosystems, it's more connected to them. And I think through the landscapes and through reviving Aboriginal culture, and you know, we're automatically seeing that women have are rising through this and getting empowered through this, and that's a really great thing. And not just for Aboriginal women, but also for non-Indigenous women. And they'll be able to share in that as well, and find some place for women and some empowerment as well. And let's face it, Western society haven't learned that yet either. You know, they're still going on the track of giving the women their rightful place. And only now we're starting to see that transition where the old, you know, excuse my way of describing this, but you know, the old white fella gentleman's club always running the show. And we never see change, and we never see anything for Aboriginal people or the environment, and we never see anything for women. And we're all saying, hey, we need to change, we need to do this, and it's so frustrating. And so we are going through a transition, and I believe that we are on a whole planet is going through a transition, and all of us. And if you can't see that, you must be blind with all the stuff that's going on now and in the news, and you know, and it will bubble up and fester. But I think at the end of it, we're all going to find better balance, and that's the same with the fire, with getting, you know, the balance back in the landscape again and making it healthier and more prosperous, you know, and that's the same as well as society.
Yeah, it sort of takes me to I want to go back a little bit about what you were saying then about the inclusion. I mean, that is an absolute illustration of true inclusion. In that you know, you're speaking about the roles of women in land management and in traditional burning and culture in general. I mean, we know that when we hear about Aboriginal culture, Indigenous, you know, practices, that women are always invariably involved. You know, we see now so many welcomes to country from respected aunties, and it's heartwarming. And as you said, the bureaucracies and the structured organisations, the response-orientated organisations. They generally change because something goes wrong. You know, they realise that, oops, we should have had these measures in place. I think a lot of that is happening now in Victoria, in that we've got some pretty severe and I think worthwhile gender equality legislation kicking into place quite shortly. And organisations have to be able to show how they do gender inclusion and how they are gender friendly, basically, and to do equality. So it's great to hear.
Yeah, and you know, it's really gentle.
Yeah,
when you burn country, and you know that nature, like when we're burning country, we're not freaking out and we're running around putting fires around. The fires are gentle, and it's a whole nother different thing. And their women and children, you know, are there at the burns, you know. And when we look at the western side of it, it's like no children allowed, national park.
No, exactly.
Oh no, children allowed on the side, and no women and children, and blah blah blah. It's just like, no, you can't say that, you know, like we got to look after the country in a way that is so gentle that everyone's involved and included, because that's where we shape our culture, and that's how we shape it on a collective, and lose the fear of the fire as well. And going back on the case of women, because I don't speak for women, of course, but I speak from my experiences around the knowledge and people and communities and from my times. But I can really proudly say that most of the breakthroughs with a lot of the work in getting the councils on board and to getting national parks involved in the training programs have been from women in the services that have made that happen. And it's been the women that's, you know, nurturing the change and doing that newborn way of doing things.
Yeah.
With that putting in that fire. And so over the years, it's been more women that have you know, taken cultural fire. So, yeah, so it's been like that, you know, and so they got a really important role to play in the times ahead of us, and as we transition as a society.
What do you think are one of your biggest barriers? Like, if it's not the bureaucracy or the, the hierarchical, patriarchal sort of organisations that are the firefighting services, say, for instance, is it? I know it's probably not a good business model to name your barriers, but how do they support you with funding? I mean, this has got to be sustainable, and it can only grow. I mean, you're going out there training people and to do what you have devoted much of your life to. So are they amping it up? Are they actually giving you some brass to actually go out there and make this sustainable? Is that the main barrier, the fiscal side of it, or is it the fact that you get lip service? They say, oh yeah, that's great, because it's politically savvy for them to say that, and then they do nothing.
Well, this the work that over the decades has just been like, when we first started doing this work, has been for nothing. I mean, only just 2 weeks ago, I went out onto a remote community, and I did it for next to nothing, without charging. And it's been communities that have been kept this alive, and most of the time, you're out there to help, and you got to think about your values, and that's really important. And the first thing people think, oh, there must be a lot of money involved. Look at all the work that's done. And it's all been done under the smell of an oily rag. and still now, I haven't even paid up my first house, and I'm almost 50.
So yeah, look,
and you still don't even have and I haven't had the privileges of having like superannuation, all that, because I was never employed by agencies.
Yeah.
Be able to support me that way. And so I think about what I'm going to do now when I get older, and so, but that's what you throw your life at, and that's something that I've always believed in. And it's not about money, it's about all that connection to people, and it's about the networks, and it's about the honesty and the truth and looking after the land, and it's about how you make people feel. And then when you see today, like agencies and stuff, and the government hasn't done anything in terms of supporting too much around, like they have put some money out there, which is just really chicken feed really to what we need to be doing. And when we look at the direction of that money, it's not the right direction of what we should be doing either. We should be really getting employment going, and getting the agencies working together, and getting the training happening, and let's get on with this now. So over the years, it's, we're still gonna have to crack that. And I can say that the most supportive funding at this present time now, since those wildfires, has been philanthropy. And we didn't see any money come out of the bush fund stuff from the Rural Fire Services. We don't know what happened there, or I hear it helped people or not, I don't know, but we never heard anything from the government. And it's like, I just don't hold my breath on that. And it's been the community that's pulled it all this way. And before those wildfires went off back in 19, it's been the communities, Aboriginal communities and non-Indigenous communities, that afford a plane fare to get me down, to afford to get some sausage sizzle happening, and to get people out on the country. And everything was done on the smell of an oily rag, right to this day. And still today, I'm sitting here, coming down here to help people for pennies. I just hope that one day soon that the government will wake up and go, look, we're wasting so much money, billions and billions of dollars going down the drain all the time. And why can't we put a fraction of that to start doing things differently, and start investing in the health of our environment, investing in our community, investing in our knowledge, investing in the future. And that's what we're not doing. And it needs to be doing that.
And there's a connotation around investment that it kind of goes to preparation and preparedness, which is what you're doing. And I can't, and it does, the mind does boggle that white fella, the colonization. We're in this situation now of climate change based on our practices. So, I could ask you the question, do you think it's fair? But I think you just answered the question. I don't think it's fair that you should carry the load that you carry, and that the other, people similar to you, and I know I've met Trent Nielsen down here, works in parks in Victoria, and Trent does some great work. There's some amazing land managers around, and cultural practitioners, dare I say it. But it's not fair, because, as you said, people are, the people who are actually causing the climate change, and quite often governments who don't recognise climate change overtly, are reticent to put their hands in their pockets. So I think I answered my own question when I was going to pose to you, do you think it's fair? Because it's not. And I think it's great that you actually say that, Victor, because it's glaringly obvious to those out there, and to those former chiefs, like I said, who have gone to government and met with government and said, this isn't going to get any better. It's just going to be, you're going to have more catastrophic events. We were lucky this summer, but you'll have more events that are catastrophic in nature, a term that is, polarizing at best. And it's because of climate change. So unless you change your preparedness practices, unless you invest some time and effort into, what thousands of years have told us has been successful, well, then it's you may as well throw your money down the drain, as you said. And when they raise money through, whatever fundraising avenues they have, and it doesn't come your way, it's a shame.
Yeah, it isn't. You can say, a lot of people can say it's not fair. Yeah, it's not fair on people who are trying to make change, and they're on their own, and all that sort of stuff. And it may not be fair, but at the end of the day, I don't really see myself, as a victim in that way, or thinking that, it's not fair that they're not supporting me in anything. What really is, if they are listening out there, those kind of people, is that you're not being fair to your own children. You're not being fair to the next generations, and you're not. That's what you really got to think about. And when it comes down to the blame game, we can't be playing that game either, in the sense of blaming people who have caused the climate change. We just got to fix it, and we just got to get on with fixing it. And we've all got to do it, no matter who has caused the problem. We've got to clean up the mess together, and that's something that is. We can't do it any other way, because we need to evolve our culture, and we need to evolve together. And we're not going to get anywhere if we telling, you clean up, I'm not doing it, I didn't make a mess. I mean, where does that get us? Yeah. And so that type of attitude needs to go out the door. And a lot of people have that attitude, black and white, and different sides. And I just don't seem to agree with that type of white take on life. I think, all right, you've done the wrong thing. Get up now, off the dust yourself down. Now, come on, let's come work together, and let's get this sorted out, and let's work it out. And that's how we need to see the way forward.
There's a speaker at the conference who's doing a session, Bob Peace, and Bob talks about complicity. He talks about the strength of putting your hand up and saying I'm complicit, and actually moving on from that. So you don't have to use words like guilty or it's my fault, but by virtue of being a white dude in a uniform, I carry some entitlement and some privilege that other people don't. So I'm essentially part of the problem, and I'm happy to say that I should be doing whatever I can in my sphere of influence to change what the status quo is. And if the status quo stinks, if we're not doing enough, well then there's a not just a case, there's an absolute urgency in us to be actively trying to assist people like you that are doing what you do. Basically, what the point I was going to get to is about custodianship. As we use the word custodians, and you said it before, when the hierarchy, when the bureaucrats, when the decision makers, they should be thinking about what sort of legacy they leave for their children. Essentially, they're poor custodians if they're not doing the right investment or the right preparation for their kids and for their future, particularly for First Nation people as well. So you're the true custodians, because we use that when we acknowledge, country at meetings and so forth. And I'll do a proper acknowledgement prior to this session on video. So I will do that. But so it's just a shame that we're not in sync. That you've got a way of thinking that is passive, and is successful and it's sustainable given the right resources and tools and funds. But at the other end of the scale is the reactive end, where It's aggression. It's like there's a wildfire. Let's aggressively approach that now because we didn't do what we should have done back in the investment days.
That's exactly right. And, you know, the turning point has to be now. And we're past the turning point in terms of doing that type of investment. And, you know, and once we start to do that, we'll start to see just how prosperous it would be, you know, it would be, and how that's going to lead into so much more, you know, into the green jobs in the future, you know, you know, into, you know, the green economics as well, which is a whole new flavor that trying to find that niche. How do we replace, you know, like 110,000 jobs in coal mining, you know, like how do we, you know, how do we get our communities, you know, a stream of income that isn't welfare? And, you know, and the answers are really in our landscapes and the health of our landscapes. And I really think that, you know, not saying that landscape alone in the sense of green jobs is going to save the economy, but it's going to be a percentage of it at least and help communities and so forth. And, you know, there's just so much good that can come out of it. And at the end of the day, I just want people to get on with the fire, get the training done. Let's get trainees happening so I can stop doing this for a little while and get them all out there managing the land so that we can move on to the next bits and move on to of the knowledge map. Because we have the fire, we have the water, we have the animals, we have the plants, we have the ceremony, you know, we have the food, we have all this other stuff that is part of the whole knowledge map. And we only just talking about fire at the moment that brings so much wealth to our society. If we can start to demonstrate all of that and activate that, and then pass that on to the next generations to improve and to make better of, and how that improves our technology, how that improves us in the modern sense as well. There's so much more that comes from that. And now we stop talking about fire. Now we're talking on a whole nother level of science and knowledge and, you know, economy and education, well-being. You know, there's so much that comes from thousands of years of experience. But yeah, people just look at it and go, oh, Aboriginal people, sticks and stones and naked ones on the land, you know, oh wow, rub two sticks together, what technology, you know, real stupid things like that, when they fail to realize the greatest intelligence is the ability to stay on the country for thousands of years without stuffing it up.
Funny about that, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't say that you have that intelligence, say, you know, not you personally, but I mean like the world, you know.
No, exactly, yeah.
That they have that intelligence, you know, and, you know, and that's an intelligence that they lack.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's all those different parts that all got to come together. And that's where the fire has been the leader in that, because we can't open the other doors if the landscape's unhealthy. And so the fire is the first thing to sort out. And so for me, it's about hurry up and get this fire thing done so that
you can move on to the next thing.
You can move on to the next thing and see how that is going to benefit everyone, you know.
You'll always be looking back going, are they doing it properly? Are they doing it? Yeah, always got to be, you know, it will be hard. I mean, it would be hard for you to move on to the next thing because you put so much time and effort and emotion into this. I mean, how much of this emotion has this taken up? How much of your heart do you throw into the work that you do? And how are you able to sort of, you know, how will you be able to remove yourself from it?
It's 100%, you know. It's your life, it's, you know.
Yeah. And
it's not like a sense of like a life of your work, in a sense of like a career, like, you know, cooking's my life, you know, or whatever it may be. It's more than that. It's, you know, it doesn't cause any stress. You know, someone said to me today, you must be the busiest person in the country. And pretty much it's you know, it's so busy. But at the end of the day, it's so easy when everything complements each other. And when it's all about, you know, that harmony. And, you know, you know, I don't, you know, it's just finding that niche where it's no stress involved. And, you know, and the secret in that has been not to bang my head against the wall, not to jump through all the hoops and think, well, that's not really necessary, you know. It's not necessary because it's not actually you know, crucial to the landscape or in this community happy or whatever it might be. And so many people go, oh, we got to burn this country. Oh, we got to do this and this and this and this. And they all stress out. We can't do it until we do all this stuff and that stuff. And you got to sit back and think, well, is that really necessary? And is it really the reality? And a lot of people say, yeah, it is a reality. But at the end of the day, you know, I've just had to remove myself from a lot of that stuff so that we can just get the job done and demonstrate the benefits, and so people can see the outcome. And that's the practical application. And that's what Indigenous teaching methods are. It's based on practical learning and teaching, and we can't
proven.
Right, and proven. And we can't demonstrate people or teach people about Aboriginal fire management if we can't show them how it's done.
Yeah.
And so that's been the primary focus, is just let's just do it. I mean, in the earlier days, I broke a few rules just to get the first fires on country, but that's what happened back then, and that's what needed to happen in those times. And that's helped to get to where we are today. And so things get easier, but you know, but having said that, there are still places that are just haven't even started yet. And so sometimes I go to another community like where I am now, and they haven't even started to do their first burns. And here we are educating mining companies and, you know, and all these councils and national parks and starting all over again. But the good thing that comes from that is that they hear about all the success in other places. And if you can't make it work here, then you make it work somewhere else. And then they see it working over there, and they go, oh, well, yeah, it's doing good there. And then they see this other community, and they see how everyone's starting to do it. And that starts to influence all the other places that have been negative about it from the start. And I find it starts to get easier as we go along.
No, look, it does. I think the fact that when people see just how emotionally involved they can be in land management, such as Indigenous land management, it does. That's the kicker. That's what they need. They need to be able to see an end result and know that it's, you know, proven and it's successful. Like I think it's a great illustration. It sort of sums up your personality to a point where, if I dare say, where you say it's easy, and I think to myself, how do you go to bed at night thinking this is pretty easy, carrying the can for 70,000 plus years of cultural practice? It's easy. I'll just keep on doing it. So I mean, yeah, it's a hell of a gig you've got. You know, it's enviable to anyone who's in you know, land management and in fire science as well. I would imagine that there's any amount of learnings they could take from what you do as part of your daily routine in your land practice. Do the scientists reach out to you much at all, Victor, at all?
Yeah, I think not as much as I would like to, you know. I mean, you know, scientists have been a funny one. I mean, researchers, it's been more like they come in, listen to us talk, and then run off with information most of the time. And then whenever they look at a program, it's about their program and how they want to run it. And we want to see science support what we're after. You know, we want science to help us to create the green economy stuff and to look at the opportunities around there. And we want the science to help us put our knowledge and demonstrate our knowledge in a way where we deliver that to the world and say, well, we can beat this weed and that weed, and help us to collate our own information. And we want science to not pick from traditional knowledge and then call it something else. We want science to respect old knowledge systems, and we want them to help those old knowledge systems to grow and to stay alive and to continue to flourish into the modern world and to be respected that way. And if that's done, then we'll see a lot more opportunity, and we'll see a lot more advancement in knowledge as well. rather than, okay, well, they're doing that, we'll take it and we'll work it out. And okay, I think, oh, maybe we'll dissect it and do this over here. Oh, we'll call it burning for biodiversity, or we'll do this, and we'll run a research project and we'll put our name on it and be the authors. And they're not respecting that knowledge properly in the way that it should be, by actually keeping it alive and allowing it to continue to demonstrate its values.
Yeah.
And so we have to create our own sort of science division now. And it shouldn't be like that. You know, they should be there, oh, we'll give you a hand, what do you need? But we don't get that. It's always take. And if they're going to give us a hand, it's about their own agenda, you know? And so you've got to remember, it's a young knowledge system.
Yeah.
And it's like we're working, you know, it's a young, they don't understand the values of knowledge properly in a traditional sense, and the respect and protocol around knowledge in a traditional sense. And I think, you know, it can be quite easily changed. And that's something that we want to see through the monitoring of all the fire that we're doing. Not only the training program is looking at training fire practitioners, but also the scientists and the monitors. They go out there and collect that data, and you know, do their masters and become the next scientists, Indigenous scientists, and involving non-Indigenous science. But at the end of the day, we're putting our shoulder behind an old knowledge system and not picking its brains and turn it into something else. That's like losing the identity of Aboriginal people in a way. And so it's really important, that question and that, you know, that discussion. And we're really, through the training program, I think, is the window for us to really start to get a good handle on science and start to use science in a way that advances Indigenous knowledge and into the future, and keeps it alive and well and respectful, and that Indigenous knowledge is the knowledge of our environment.
You've used the word respect there a couple of times, and I was thinking that as you were talking earlier, that it seems to be the sort of cure-all, maybe not cure-all, but it seems to solve a lot of the issues around society. So, you know, Prime Minister comes out today when they're talking about sexual harassment in the workplace. He said it starts with respect. So when they're talking about, and it also starts with education. So, I mean, you mentioned education before. You mentioned being in school systems and talking to kids about fire science, essentially, but in a natural way, and in an empathic way, once again. So yeah, the respect side of it really does resonate with me, because they need to acknowledge it and they need to respect it, and they need to respect it for what it's done, particularly, you know, in the last, you know, in our living memory, and certainly what it can do in the future. I mean, it's you know, it needs to be, it needs that sort of mutual cultural respect that, you know, seems to be lacking quite often nowadays.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, and it goes both ways, you know, it's not just a one-way thing. You know, like there's beautiful roses on both sides of the fence, you know, and I learned that from traveling around so many places and meeting so many people. And yeah, and it's about respect. And you know, Western science has a wealth of advanced technology that can help us, and Aboriginal knowledge has a wealth of knowledge of the landscapes from thousands of years of experience, you know. And if only they were to work together and respect each other in the right way, we could move mountains and leap bounds. You know, I've stepped on the toes of a lot of research institutions, like when they come and done the wrong thing, and I get angry at them, you know, in the past when I'm a bit more hard-headed. And even now, I don't agree with researchers just coming in and just taking stuff, and I sometimes I put them in their place. And but at the end of the day, you know, it's about working together, and I'm just still waiting for the day when they come and approach us the right way, and actually say, well, how do we do this the right way, instead of, you know, trying to get around you in different ways and trying to get a hold of that knowledge in different ways. And yeah, so it needs to. It's all about just sitting down and coming together, because, you know, it's not, like I said before, it's not about the blame. And it's about, you know, well, I'll sit down with anyone, regardless who they are, and work it out. and let's make it happen. And I guess that's a big part of just being a lot softer around this work and not being aggressive. But at the end of the day, it's you got to be open-minded, and you got to be able to share the benefits, but it's got to be done in respect of people and place.
Yeah,
and that's really crucial.
And the word, vulnerability comes up quite often when it talks about, men needing to tap into their own nature, while their feelings about nature as well, particularly in this sort of context. But I was watching Insight a couple of, Q&A. Sorry, Insight was the program you were on once upon a time. But you've probably been on a lot of programs, but with Bruce Pascoe and Stan Grant at either end of the panel the other week, and I just thought it was dynamite. It was so good to hear Grant articulate and aggressive but empathic, and then Bruce, who's just got this soft nature and who talks about getting back to where we were, reflecting back, looking forward by looking back, and looking at the learnings and looking at it. He just had such a soft, once again, empathic way to deal with how we should be utilising what we don't know. It's the whole, the amount of knowledge that we don't know because we haven't stopped to listen to our Indigenous communities, our First Nations. And Stan Grant just saying, to him as a reporter, it's just a no-brainer. Let's do this now because it's just going to be too late eventually. It was a hell of a session. I just thought it was one of the best things I'd sort of seen, for quite some time.
Mm. Oh yeah, they were two opposites in a way. Yeah. But at the end of the day, there's a time when you have to raise your voice.
Yep.
But it shouldn't be all the time.
No. Yeah. And like going back to what I said before about it not being fair. I mean, the theme of this of our conference about inspiring action, but talking about gender justice. It's just, we kind of, someone said to me, what is this about? Is it about, people being wrong or right, in a justice context? And I said, no, it's about fairness. It's about societal fairness. It's about, as you said before, it's about respect. It's about mutual respect. It's about acknowledging things that have gone on, things that are going on, and actually, ensuring that they're sustainable. I mean, there'd be nothing worse than seeing something like cultural practices of any sort, not just land management, not just fire management, but of any sorts of our First Nations people, and I'll put my foot in it here, not existing anymore, which I'm sure has happened without a shadow of a doubt. Languages, say, for instance, Indigenous plants that may not be around anymore, and, flora and fauna. So it's kind of, there's a lot of work to be done. And I mean, my sphere of influence, once again, is within the emergency services organisations. Unfortunately, it's kind of, sometimes the higher you go up in the organisations, the less likely you are to listen to people like you, because you're talking on a totally different level. And I, for one, really appreciate it, Victor, because it does, it's the language that digs deeply into people's hearts, because I know a lot of people that have a lot of empathy for where our First Nations people are today. For instance, we're still talking treaties, we're still talking reconciliation, action plans and inclusion plans, where that should be a done deal ages ago, for sure. Renew them, revisit them, but it's 2021 now. When Justin Trudeau, I think it was, looked at diversity in his Canadian Parliament, they said, "Why are you doing this?" And he said, "Because I've got to get the year right now." I think he said, "Because it's 2015. What other reason do you want other than it's now? We need to be showing action and doing action now, directly relating to the sort of work you're doing."
Yeah, well, like just this place here where I am now, and we did a burn here 2 years ago, and we come back to that site yesterday to have a look, and we come back to the site to have a look, and what was there before was lantana and dead grass, and it's just a mess. You couldn't even hardly walk through the country, and now we went back, and there's like heaps of native grasses, there's food, berries, I even saw emu footprints, everything. And that is the response from country, and that's what allows me to say it's possible, because I'm there burning a lot of places and seeing the return, and seeing that the weed disappear and the native come back. And if it didn't, I'd be talking like, oh man, we're in trouble. We can't seem to do anything here. We can't seem to bring back the natives. We can't control the fire.
Yeah.
And you hear me talking like that, then you should be worried.
Yeah, exactly.
When the light nature and the positivity that I'm telling, that I shine with, is not something that just comes from me. It comes from the landscape, and it comes from, oh yeah, we can do this, because I've seen the benefits, and I've seen the country improve, and I've seen people improve, and young people have hope, and their eyes just light up, you know, to a whole wealth of information. And when they see the land respond the right way, they're just so excited. And all that work on country that's been done over the years, and all that response has built my attitude. And that attitude is that positive attitude that it can be done. So when you hear people negative, oh, we're going to lose everything, we can't do anything, it's climate change, or, those people need to just go away.
Or maybe head into the city, because I can tell you now, concrete doesn't talk to you like country talks to you, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't say go away, but
no, I know what you mean.
People need to stop, and what they need to, we just can't listen to them. Yeah, and we can't listen to people in any negative form. It's just not going to get us anywhere, because when we look back the last few decades it's always been like a lot of negativity. And when I first started doing this, there was negativity everywhere, and the mountains that we had to climb to get rid of that negativity. And every now and again there would be a different slogan that would come out, like, oh, it's too expensive to do cultural fire management, and you can't stop the fire, and all these things. Oh, you can't learn from North Queensland and bring it to Victoria. All of these things that they'd say over the years, and I wouldn't respond to that. I'd be just, okay, let's make it work, and then show them, and they would see it and then go, oh, well, yeah, you can. And so you don't hear people saying certain things anymore, and that's because they're starting to learn in different ways. And so, and we can't give our children, you can't tell our children that all the emus are going to be gone, they're never going to see one, or the koalas. We can't tell them that we can't do anything about climate change and the world, and like, that's just ridiculous, And if I was to say that, then that would be from my experiences of the landscape. Like I said before, if the land wasn't responding the right way, then I would be actually saying to you truthfully,
we're in trouble.
We're in trouble.
Yeah.
And we are in trouble, but not as deep as trouble as you think. We can bounce back, and it's possible, because Mother Nature is an amazing thing, and the planet is a living being. It's a one being, and it has an immune system, and we need to tap into that, and we need to be good cells and good bacteria, and we need to help Mother Earth and give her a hand, and to help ourselves.
No, it's a brilliant way to do it, and it's kind of a good way to end the discussion in a roundabout way, because that is evocative in of itself. In that, once again, you mentioned gender in Mother Earth, and you're absolutely right. I mean, we've done our fair share in stuffing the joint up. We now have the once again being complicit and saying, yep, maybe shouldn't have done it this way. How about we look at doing it a different way? It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'll let you say a little sign off, Victor, and I will do the appropriate acknowledgements and give you a better bio blurb. We need your photo and we need your bio so we can stick it in our program. We know that I'm in debt to you for coming in here and having a chat with me today, albeit virtually. Hopefully we can catch up in April. I know you've got a lot of fans here in Victoria. You mentioned a couple of them today when I spoke to you on the phone. So look, it really does kick off, or is a major fill-up to a conference that is close to my heart and really important in the scheme of emergency management and consideration of gender, consideration of intersection of Aboriginality, Indigenous, land management, homelessness, climate change. There's so many things we're talking about, and what you've done today to contribute has just been awesome. So thanks so much, Victor.
thanks for that. It's been a real pleasure to be able to contribute to this. And I guess I'll, you know, close off with the fire again and go back to the fire. And that the fact is that, you know, we're always going to be needing the firefighters, and we're going to continue to fight fire. But let's get the process of looking after the land and start that transition to lessen the threats of that, and to make it safer for everyone, for the firefighters. But, you know, we also need land managers too. And so we need a lot more people on board and more employment. And that's where the training needs to happen as well. So, you know, we're all in this together. So thanks so much.
No worries. And brilliantly said, because I mean, if we can make it about, I know myself personally, if we can make it a little bit about the fireys, then I'll listen a little bit closer, I can tell you now, because it is about safety. It's about community safety. It's about our flora and fauna safety, and it's about, you know, human safety as well. So, that's right, mate. Thanks so much, Victor.
Thank you.
Not at all.